Hey listeners, welcome to Bridging the Gap. I am your host again, Cooper Green, and today we have two very special guests here with us. We have Natalie Whatcott and Kerry Gibson. Will you guys please introduce yourselves?
I'm Natalie Whatcott. I am President and CEO of Utah Behavior Services, one of the largest ABA companies in the state of Utah.
And I'm Kerry Gibson. I do government affairs for Utah Behavior Services and for the Coalition of Utah Autism Providers.
Awesome. Well, it's so exciting to have you guys here. Thank you again for coming out. We know February is a special month for UTBS, one of the main events here that we do here on the Hill. And by the way, for our listeners, when we say the word the Hill, we are referring to the Utah State Capitol. Is that correct, Kerry?
Absolutely. It's Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and also here in Utah. If you've ever been to the Capitol, it's on a hill. It's
Awesome.
truly on a hill.
We're just in Utah, though. We ain't storming the Capitol.
Awesome. Just wanted to clarify that up. Again, the special thing that we have going on is Hearts on the Hill. Can one of you guys explain what the heck that is to our listeners?
Kerry, do you want to kind of explain how we got into advocacy and how it all kind of started?
Sure,
That'd be
absolutely.
great.
So I'd probably answer that question first by looking back a few years. I was just reminiscing this week that this is the beginning of my 20th session up on Capitol Hill. I was elected to the legislature and served as a member of the House of Representatives 20 years ago. And when I started, I remember thinking how kind of overwhelmed I was that first year, trying to understand everything that was coming at me. And all of a sudden, I remember about 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Valentine's Day and realizing that I had done absolutely nothing for my wife or kids for Valentine's Day. And I was pretty disappointed by that, but only because my heart was there, but I was so busy and I didn't understand. I lost track of time and what the day was and all of that. It was just another day in the throes of this intense sprint that we call a legislative session. And it's funny, I had this, someone that year had passed out a chocolate rose and put on the desks of all the representatives. And so I took this chocolate rose home and gave it to my wife that night and said, "Happy Valentine's Day, honey."
Bless Katrina's heart, man. Bless Katrina's heart.
And that was our Valentine's Day for 6 years while I was in the legislature, because it seemed to happen every year.
Yeah.
But again, I want to go back to how I felt as a legislator. I was a farmer, a small business owner who wanted to come up here and do something different, something good for my community. And I think that's sometimes something we forget, that these are just normal people who are farmers, teachers, builders, whatever they are. They're coming up here trying to represent their communities and do something good for the community. And I just, it's easy to kind of look at them as different than us, right? But they're just humans that struggle with the same things we do, so I've always known how important it is, I guess, to touch people on a personal level. And so I got involved in UTBS after they had started this tradition, but it was beautiful to me that they recognized that legislators up here often are hit with a million asks, right? There's, can you do this? Can you do that? You're here to represent me, right? And so they're asked for a lot of things. But once in a while, to just recognize that human side and say, thank you for what you're doing. We see you, we hear you, we care about you, and here's the chocolate rose, right? or here is a Valentine saying, thank you for what you're doing to serve. And I get emotional because I care about these people. They're my friends now. They're people who are just, again, trying to do the right things for the right reasons. And so it's just every connection in life is about some kind of a personal interaction with someone. And so if you have an opportunity to look that person in the eye and just tell them thank you, it's good for both sides. It's good for everybody. And when you have a child who is suffering from some kind of a a challenge in their life, or a family that's struggling with a challenge in their life, and you can talk to a person, a legislator, policy maker, that, you know, in that kind of way, it's a way of serving both both the child and the legislator. I have seen miracles out of these legislators when they are surrounded by a child with autism who just gives them a hug and tells them they love them. I have seen these people, these hard personalities sometimes, that just absolutely melt.
Yep.
And again, it's that interpersonal relationship that just matters more than anything else you could do.
Yeah. I think for us, how we got involved in the legislative process, Kerry was here for years before we got involved, was we had started UTBS in 2010, and that was right before the waiver came out, when they were doing the waiver in 2013, I think. Anyways, and we worked the waiver. It was considered experimental. I mean, it was just a temporary program, which is why it was waiver. And then it became a mandate from, there was a number of people who worked so hard, families, parents, national advocates for this. There was Dan and Lori Unum, who came in from Autism Speaks to help advocate for the autism mandate for the kiddos and families of Utah. And the mandate went into effect in 2016. But it's still new, and we're still working on the exact same guidelines that we had from 2013. And then in 2018, the field had evolved enough and had created a more permanent basis in the field that we had moved into permanent treatment for these kiddos. It was no longer, experimental. It was evidence-based treatment, and for the families and kiddos with autism. And so as we tried to move into more of the permanent status, we tried to work through the beginning changes, the beginning outlines of a program that have many hiccups and problems, because you don't really know how to set the program up, or they were the people who set the initial guidelines up for Medicaid in the state of Utah did the best they could do at the time. And I think, but it needed to evolve. And I'll never forget being in a meeting and advocating for like, hey, we're on the same rate from 2013 as 2018. I mean, we're looking 5 years later, and there's been no changes in the rate. And we're trying to keep up with retaining staff and training staff. And there had been updates in our field that required our direct line technicians to take national tests. And the individual said, we don't make the policies, we just follow through on them. That's all we have. And we were like, well, then where do we go to make the change? Where do we have to get involved to make the change? And they said, it's the legislators. And we went, all right, there we go. And that began the involvement to say, if we want to be an advocate for families, for kiddos, for change, to help grow this service and the integrity of the field, we're going to have to learn how to do the legislative process. And it has been a study on how to do the legislative process and how that all works and how complicated it is, and how we build relationships. And
well, with that, if you wanted to jump into a black hole, just say the legislators, right? Like to your average person on the street, and they say, well, we can't fix this. It's the legislators. I mean, how would we all react to that? It's like this, wait, what does that even mean? And it is, it's a complicated and kind of difficult process, which is where I come in. I saw what they were doing with the Hearts on the Hill. And I actually had a daughter working at UTBS at the time that said, Dad, I think they could use your help.
We were learning the process. It was the first year of learning. And there she was like, yeah, you need a little help there.
So at that moment that you guys realized you guys needed to go to the legislators for help, what year was that? What'd you say?
I think it was 2018 that we started. In 2019, we moved into that more. And I think that was the first year, 2018, 2019, that we did the Hearts on the Hill, which is basically Valentining the legislators. They are here on Valentine's Day working hard to represent their communities and their constituents, and away from the loved ones, the ones that travel in from all over the state. They're not home to be with their loved ones on Valentine's. And we really wanted them to know we see you, you know, and we know what we're asking for. We're asking for changes. We're asking for increase in reimbursement rates for the profession, and so that we can increase quality of services and training and all of that that's entailed for that. And the first year we did it, we got to meet people. That's what we ended up with. It was about relationship building that year. And the next year, it was the same thing. And then in 2020, we thought we had our first guest success, and we were doing there's multiple ways to increase the integrity of the behavior analysis field in the state of Utah. And part of that is licensure. And we had individual licensure that had gone into effect in 2015, but there was no provider agency licensure. There was an individual professional, where all other fields, like mental health field, you have a child care center, or you have a behavioral health care center, or all these other, schools, all the places that have to follow regulations we were under the Department of Human Services for licensure. And as we advocated for that in 2019 and 2020, we got our first little bump in 2020, but then COVID hit. So we did end up with our agency licensure with the Department of Human Services, and they're like, oh, it's day treatment, and kind of do that stuff. But at 2020, at the end of the session, because of COVID, they basically took off the budget off, because nobody knew what that was going to entail to get us the state through COVID. And so that was the year that Kerry started to really get involved with us. But we came back in 2021, and we have made huge strides. And we have, every year, we bring envelopes. They're the big envelopes from our kids. They're from our kids and our staff from the regions of the legislators. So it's their constituents, their kids that we serve in their regions that think of them, and we start them in 1st of January. They make Valentines specifically for the legislators who are working on their behalf to improve the services and growing of the field and all the things that we're advocating for, to say, hey, we see you, and thank you for thinking of us. And then the second part of that came in, our kids work on community service, like community outing goals, community goals, because they're it's part of life, right? That their kids need to be able to learn to go into the community and follow community rules and regulate. There's all sorts of targets for our kids. And our kids learn these things, and they learned and work all year long to be able to come up here on Valentine's Day with their staff and their to show and practice the skills they've learned by the kids get to Valentine their legislator, and they get to take a picture, and they get to say hi, and they get to give a hug, and they get to be a part of their world, a world that is shaping their services. And that's really why Hearts on the Hill is so impactful for us, because the kids are getting to be their own voice that day, and it's not our voice, it's theirs.
So again, from the perspective of a former legislator, I just want to kind of make the connection between data and feelings of the heart, right? Data is like thousands of bills coming at you nonstop, and amendments, and people outside the door saying, I need you to do this, or I want you to do this, or whatever, and it's data oriented.
It's like, I feel like it's, after observing it, I feel like it's like, in the Little Nemo movie, when they have the seagulls and they're all going, mine, 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 and they're all jumping and doing that. They're like, senator, 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 representative, representative, and it's just,
Or a legislator comes out the door and it's like, everybody
it's
swarms
crazy
around that person. And again, I remember sitting there being hit with all this information, all this data, and thinking, there is no way that I can process all this. Like, I knew what I knew, and I was good at some of the things that I needed, and I became a subject matter expert on those things. But as all this other stuff hit me, I realized there were some people outside the door that had information that could help me. And my question was, which one of those did I trust? Which one of those could I communicate with and could I understand? And when I got involved with Utah Behavior Services, I will admit there was a time there where it was like, they had just started this process of advocacy with the legislature. Nobody really knew who we were, right? Nobody knew. And now...
And we didn't know what we were doing at all. We had to have Kerry that has guided and given us a great teacher on how to do this.
But even if I didn't know a particular legislator, it's been interesting now to walk up to a new legislator, or not new, but been around for a little while, and talk to them about one of our issues, and they'll automatically go, "Oh, you're the ones that brought us the Valentine's on Valentine's Day." So
that's incredible.
Again, just make a connection to those people that, we see you and we understand what you're going through when we don't need you. It helps them to be more receptive to us when we do need them. So again, it goes back to that interpersonal relationship thing that it's, what's the old adage? I get teased sometimes for speaking in analogies, but I think the old adage of it's better to use honey than a stick or whatever. Vinegar. In other words, treat people like you want to be treated, and be kind, and I think that has made a huge difference in our efforts up here.
Yeah, well, and it's a process. I think that's another thing, is it is a process in patience. You need to understand they have so many voices asking for the exact same dollar, or policy. It may not even have a fiscal note attached to the bill that they're trying to pass or change, but there is so many, and I don't think I never would have had the opportunity to learn this process and grow to respect and love the legislators that serve this state, and because the way that they have stepped up and step in when it is really hard. It is hard. If you watch the process up here, you watch what goes on outside the Senate doors or the House doors when they're trying to do floor time, and hear all the bills and some of the arguing that's going back and forth. There's a lot going on, and it's just really impactful to me to learn that process and learn how to advocate through that process, and help our kids and our staff learn how to get involved to advocate for themselves and be a part of that process, which comes into Hearts on the Hills. Our staff is here. Our staff are involved from January clear through Valentine's Day, doing it. And we feel pretty blessed to be able to do this and continue on this tradition. And it's more of it's just a love to say thank you back to our communities.
I went to Hearts on Hill last year with UTBS as well, and the way you guys articulate that, it is incredible to see the clients and the Valentine cards and the way they interact with each other. You can truly see a special connection just in the eyes, and just being around in the Capitol building itself. I mean, the Capitol building is very pretty to be in, but not only being in the building, but you're also being with the legislators, like you guys said, and it's incredible to see.
And it's loud. And it's chaotic, and that's what but it is.
Lots of multitasking.
There's a lot of multitasking, a lot of movement, and to see our kids be successful in that environment is the most incredible worthwhile thing that I can see as a professional, as a mom, is to see those kids be able to be in their communities and be a part of their communities for themselves and be successful in it. That's what's, I think, the Hearts on the Hill part. I'll come up here and advocate all session long and all year long what we do to change and to advocate for them and for these families. But it's the most impactful for me, and why I do it is because the Hearts on the Hill, that's what fills my bucket. It's to see them be successful, to see them just light up and beam, and to see the legislators connect with them, who they're fighting for, you know.
Does this happen is it on Valentine's every year?
Yes.
Is it multiple times during February, or is it just once?
Once. It's quite the process. I mean, every legislator receives a Valentine's from us. It's expanded a little bit over the years that I noticed after the first year or two, it was just the legislators that we had focused on, but there's other heroes that are hidden that make this session work and be successful as well. The Highway Patrol are one of them that I learned the involvement of the Highway Patrol, and they bring Highway Patrol in because that is who provides the security for the state. And they're the ones that provide the security for the Capitol, and they bring them in from all over the state to help cover the legislative session and provide that level of security. So, you know, we noticed them, and they're always here. And then I started to hear some of their stories about being away from their families. And so a couple of years ago, we started recognizing them, and we just do a luncheon one day of the session. We do a luncheon for all the Highway Patrol that are up here working, just to say we see you and thank you. Thank you for providing the security. Thank you for listening to all the crowd, because it gets noisy up here with all the marble and all the comings and goes, and it gets really loud. And they're here. They show up every day. And so we did that. There's they call them the green coats and the black coats, depending on the House or the Senate. But they're the ones that are sitting out. They're the gentlemen that are sitting outside those chambers and helping the process and kind of helping the flow of. So this year I was like, no, they need to be included, you know. So this year we're gonna do a Valentine's for them. So it's always about looking around. There's a lot of heroes with the legislators, right? But there's so many people in the background that help this process. Sure. It takes a village to do this. It takes a village to run this state. It takes a lot. And a lot of people volunteer. A lot of people help. A lot of people sacrifice time with their families, away from their families. And I'm just so grateful that I've had the opportunity over the last 5 years to come and see that and learn it and be a part of the process. I'm still learning. I still don't understand all of it. There's lingo, you know, and processes that, you know, how to write a bill and, you know, and fiscal notes and all different kinds of things. But it's a pretty incredible process, and people that have done it and helped and supported us through it.
I wanted to shift gears now towards advocacy. Obviously, when you guys say that Hearts on the Hill happens on February 14th, it's not like you guys do it one day and then boom, it stops right there. Can you guys explain? I'm sure it's a year-long process for all of this. Can you get into that?
Very much. So the Hearts on the Hill Day is more about recognizing people as often as we can, right? In that particular case, recognizing them for their efforts all year long. But you're correct, Cooper. Like there's a lot of work, and that's why we do it at the end of the day, is to help these kids, right? And to help them to have access to the treatment that they need to be successful. And one of the things that's always impressed me about UTBS and the coalition is that they recognize that when a child is in crisis, it generally means that the whole family is in crisis.
Wait, just stop you. You said UTBS coalition? Or
UTBS and the Coalition of Autism Providers.
Oh, can you guys explain who that is as well?
Yeah, so it's a collaboration of autism providers that gets together and helps us with our advocacy efforts.
Yes.
Different providers.
So in 2018, we Utah Behavior Services being the largest provider, and for one of the first in the state of Utah, we began a process for knowledge, right? To be able to grow. I'm totally blowing this how to explain this, but in 2018, going to national conferences and connecting with national leaders in autism services and applied behavior analysis, we connected with national associations. And one of those associations that we connected with was the Council of Autism Service Providers. And it is the provider association nationally for applied behavior analysis providers. And we realized we needed a voice we needed that a Utah voice for that, right? Mm-hmm. And so we started in 2018 trying to gather some of the other providers, some of the smaller providers, and some of our friends that we'd known. And we started in 2018. There was 5 of us in the association or the coalition. There was 5 of us that began and we just voted in the first board, and we then COVID hit, and we kind of worked through COVID with all of that. But as have grown, it's a coalition of providers in Utah who can speak as a group for providers, agencies in Utah, advocating for the field and for treatment and for agency regulations or anything that's going to affect our field and our agencies, which legislation does. So the coalition, Kerry helps the coalition be representative as well up here in the state.
So maybe the best way I could answer that question, Cooper, is that the legislature generally rewards collaboration. Like, think about it. There's 75 members of the House, 29 members of the Senate. And so to get anything done, you have to have 38, 15, and 1, right? A majority of each of those bodies. And they are much more, or more, right? More than 50%. And each of those people generally reward a process in which there's been a lot of thought put into a proposal and a lot of collaboration and a lot of buy-in. Because the worst thing a legislator wants is for, say one business comes in and says, Mr. Legislator, I have this concern, this hurts me or this affects me. And the next thing you know, they pass a policy or some kind of a directive, and the next thing you know, the neighbor down the street is like, hey, that policy you passed actually hurt me. Right? And
but
so
that does happen.
And it happens a lot.
Absolutely happens.
And they do not want to be in the business of picking winners and losers. They want to see collaboration in an industry. And so when we come in as UTBS, that's effective. But when we come in as a coalition and say, hey, we've had these discussions as an industry, and we want to have this policy because as an industry, we are experiencing these kind of things together. The legislature rewards that process, and they look forward to working with us much more effectively when we have buy-in from a larger group of people. So, and again, the coalition has recognized that it's valuable. Every member of the coalition has recognized that it's valuable for them to have the type of a voice that they couldn't have on their own, to have help in the things that they need for their businesses to succeed. And at the end of the day, not only for the businesses have to succeed in order for the most important thing to happen, and that's these children to have the process and the treatment that they need to be successful in life. And so that's what we're all about as a group, is helping this policy-making process have credibility and strength so that legislators can have confidence in what we bring to them from a policy perspective and from a funding perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's, as for the coalition, it's about educating what good quality applied behavior analysis is, and helping to grow the field in the state of Utah. improve the quality of services in the field for Utah, have integrity in the field. That is the type of field that you would want to grow for services for the families in Utah, is quality with integrity, and so that's what the coalition does through its advocacy work that we're involved with. But yeah.
So given everything you guys said, that was a great explanation. What did you guys work on last year as a group and a coalition?
What did we accomplish last year? Last year was huge wins. Huge wins for our families, huge wins for our kids, and huge win for the profession. We were able to remove all age caps for autism services for an individual with an autism diagnosis. So up until this point, they had an age cap of 10 years of age that the insurance no longer had to cover them. Then we were able, well, it was 18. Yeah, we have an age cap. Last year we were able to move the age cap from 18, there is no age cap anymore. So any aged individual with that type of diagnosis is eligible to receive that insurance, that treatment, that medical treatment from their insurance plan. And then we were able to remove the age caps in 2023. We were also able to close the gap and level up for the reimbursement rate for the treatment for the diagnosis of autism. So up until last year, autism is a DSM-5 diagnosis, just like anxiety, ADHD, depression, and the specialties for those diagnoses from the DSM are traditional mental health, licensed marriage and family, clinical social or clinical mental health counselor. But and they were reimbursed at one rate. But if your child was diagnosed with autism, which is still under the behavioral health criteria, your specialist is a behavior analyst, and our reimbursement rates were substantially lower than if you were a professional treating other behavioral health diagnoses. And so it's been a really a process over 5 years to level up with that profession.
Bridge the gap.
We've been bridging the gap, bridging the gap between our applied behavior analysis services and our traditional mental health, behavioral health service, which Utah Behavior Services provides both those specialties. And we have many of our professionals have a dual license to both in behavior analysis and in social work or clinical psychology stuff. So, yeah.
And I would just add, remember we talked about Hearts on the Hill. That was about legislators, right? And letting them know that we care about them. And that's important. But what our real mission is here is to support and help these kids.
Our families.
And the families of these children. And so when we, at the end of the day, we spend all year, and yes, the legislative session is a sprint, right? It's a sprint. The marathon happens the rest of the year. And we never stop, like ever.
No.
There's constantly efforts with legislators to educate them, with agencies like the Department of Health. Those efforts are ongoing to make sure that they understand what these kids need to be successful. And that's what I want to make sure that we remember, is that at the end of the day, yes, we care about legislators and everyone else, but we care mostly, our main goal, I shouldn't say more, but our main goal is to support and build these children and help them to be productive members of society. And so that takes constant education, because again, most of these legislators don't have this personal experience, right? And so again, as I described my feelings that first year, it's been fun for me to now be on the outside of the door, the outside in the hall, and have legislators who I may or may not have known or whatever, or maybe I do, and they come up and say, I need to ask you a question because you're the autism guy, right? And I've run across this issue. How do I address this in a way that helps you to be successful? Because again, they don't know it, they don't understand it, and so we become a trusted source of information for them, so that we can help solve the problems that our kids are facing.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, Utah Behavior Services changed our mission. And the reason we changed our mission was because we realized that we were not just creating successful children and developing strong families, we were advocating for them. And that was a huge part of what we do for them and how we help them, because our families can be exhausted. They are trying to be a family and to be able to function in a normal, crazy way that a family does function, but they're trying to do everything they can do to maintain it as being a family, and that takes a lot of their energy. So we became involved because if the families couldn't do it, and that's what we were seeing, is our families are so overwhelmed. If the families couldn't advocate, who was going to advocate for them? Who was going to advocate for these kids? And so if it wasn't us that was going to step up and help, who was going to do it? So we began our advocacy journey. Like I said, back in 2018, we began our advocacy journey. And 2 years ago, we realized that nowhere in our mission statement did it say that we are huge advocates for. So we changed our mission statement to add, we advocate for and are dedicated to creating successful children and developing strong families.
And it's interesting, Cooper, as you were speaking, Natalie, it made me think again of myself, okay, and my personal experience. When I was a legislator, I tried to stay away from human services because it was painful. It was painful. I care about people, and I could not stand to see all of this need that I felt like I couldn't solve.
Couldn't help everybody.
It hurt my heart. Now, let me tell you what helps my heart, because now I'm in the middle of this a lot, right? And what happens to me is we advocate for these kids thinking we're doing them some good, and we are, okay? But at the end of the day, it helps us as a team, as individuals.
It fills our buckets.
It fills our buckets.
It
right?
fills our emotional buckets.
Does.
I think that's a big thing, because as we advocate for these families, I've been asked, why does UTBS get so involved and put so much effort and resource into this advocacy, where you don't see other providers doing that? Why are we doing that? And like I said, if it's not for us, then if we weren't doing it, who would be able to do it for these families, right? Mm-hmm. But it also is pretty darn rewarding when we get our wins for our families, when we get to see them be strong, and when we're up here, yes, we're advocating. And yes, we're from Utah Behavior Services, and yes, we're committed to this, but we aren't advocating for just our clients. We aren't advocating for just our families. We are advocating for every family in the state of Utah that is receiving applied behavior analysis services for their kids with autism. Yep. We're not here for just us. We are here for every child and every family, advocating for them.
Yeah. And that's what it's done for me. I mean, I will admit, I run around up here a little bit like a crazy man sometimes, because there's a lot going on, and it's easy to get caught up in, man, this is crazy, this is a lot of work. And then there's those quiet moments of reflection where you just, you have one of those kids come up and give you a hug, or you're just laying in bed at night and you're just like,
We did some good today.
We made a difference.
We
today.
had some major wins
And
today.
It's a beautiful thing. And
All the
it's-
Utah families had major wins.
Yeah.
Every time that there's a win up here,
Yeah.
it's for every Utah family that has a child or an individual with autism or, that needs these services and support.
The old story about the starfish washing up on the beach, and the starfish wash up on the beach, and they're all going to die because they're not going to get swept back into the ocean. And the little kid, going out and picking them up and throwing them back in the water. And the concept was, the dad would come up and say, "Well, gosh, why? You're never going to get them all." and well, yeah, but I got that one, right? And that's the key. You help one person. The rising tide in this case lifts all of the ships in the harbor, and we do the best we can, and it helps us. It fills us up, right?
Yeah, and I think it also is one of the reasons why UTBS is so invested in the growth of the field of Utah of applied behavior analysis is because there's so many who need the help that we want to grow that field, and we want to strengthen that field, and we want to be a part of that, no matter where that kiddo or that person is in the state is. And that's what we get to accomplish here at the legislative level, is we get to help all the kids. We get to help all the families, not just the families that we serve. We do serve a number of families, hundreds of families. And we have hundreds of families that we provide an income for as employees and that are members of our team. And we take care of hundreds of families that way across the state, from Logan clear down to St. George and into Richfield. When we're here at the legislative session, and when we're working up here on legislation, we're not just working for our families. It's a win for every family.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge thing. It's a win for the field. It's a win for the behavior analysis field. It's a way for us to grow the field, which is what we need. And I think that's a big aspect of, we're not just in our company, you want to help everybody, and you hear the families, and there's a point in time when there was waiting lists for kids to get in, and you feel bad, we want to help everybody, we want to do it, but we need to do good quality services, which means we can only help so many, but when we're up here, we get to help them all, and that is one of the reasons why I am so committed to the advocacy, because I get to help every family in the state of Utah, and not just UTBS families. We get to help every family, not just the families that Utah Behavior Services serves.
All that was beautifully said. Over the last course of 5 years, obviously you guys have built all these connections, built all these relationships, all do, help the families and the kids. How does that continually evolve, along with building the mental health professionals in the field, and
how does it live on into the future, for the longevity, right, for the kids and families and services? There's a number of ways that what we are doing up here allows for us to be able to do that. I think one thing to note that I've had to learn, with every election year, there is a change. And it's not like it's a one and done for the relationships up here with the legislators. It actually is an ongoing process, and there is new people who are being elected in that want to make a difference for their community and are elected into the positions that they have to represent their constituents. And we start again from the bottom to help educate them on where we've been, on where we're going, on what we need to accomplish and how we're going to do it. So the work is never done, and it will never be done for these families and for all families with any behavioral health need, not just the kids with autism, but also with any severe behaviors or any behaviors that are impacting a family that can put a family in crisis, or they just don't know what to do. We want to keep improving that, keep opening the fields up, keep investing in our time and the growth of those fields, and that takes work up here every year. As new legislators come in, we do have those who have been here longer, but every year we work all year long with over and over again because the work's never done.
And I can only talk about my personal experience, and that is that after 15 plus years of elected office for me, I found myself at a crossroads where I thought, what am I going to do with my time, talents, and efforts with my life going forward? And as I chose that, I wanted to be very deliberate, and I thought to myself, I've had a lot of cool opportunities, seen a lot of things, been able to, serve in a lot of capacities, but it always came back to people, right? And how I could serve people and how I could help to make the world a better place. I know that seems trite. That seems like a statement that you'd hear on a beauty pageant, but how can I help people? How can I help the people I care about? And as I ran across, this opportunity with Utah Behavior Services, I realized that there's not much of a better way, for me to really help strengthen people and families. And I think, to me, that's the legacy that I want to remember. This was something that was so hard for me at one point that I avoided it, right? And now I'm
now you're in it, Betty. You're just totally in it. You're like, and we're in it together.
And I'm grateful for that, because at the end of the day, that gives meaning to waking up in the morning. Like, I was tired of waking up and just doing what I needed to do. I wanted to have a purpose and a mission for everything that I did.
Well, and I think families are a strong core of who we are personally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have 8 kiddos that I've raised. 6 of them are biological, but I did foster care I couldn't even count, for hundreds of kids, both with the state of Utah, as well as private, as well as kinship over 30-year period. And families and raising these kids and keeping a family unit together is so core to who I am and where my belief is, that that's what fills my bucket as families. At Utah Behavior Services, we have a number. Kerry talks about how he got involved with Utah Behavior Services through his daughter who worked for us. We have a number of family members that are not like, I am a founder and an owner of Utah Behavior Services, and my family was raised serving families. My children were raised serving other children who did not have the opportunities, and they were in foster care. So there's a strong belief from me, core, about keeping families together and serving families. Kerry has
just to
what?
Well, just to piggyback on the personal experience again, this daughter, I realized that one of the children that she was working with at the time was a neighbor. And I didn't even know that the child had.
We did our job, HIPAA.
had this disability. I had no idea, and not necessarily a neighbor, but close enough that I should have known. So I had the opportunity to engage with this family in the community and see them in a personal type of circumstance, and I realized how important her work with this child was to their family, our family. When the dad would come up to me and put his arms around me and say, "Your daughter made a difference to my child." Yeah. That's what does it, right? That's what's important. So, and then, okay, to get the tears out, let me just say how important it is to switch from that trigger, right? That driving factor within us
Mm-hmm.
back to the reality of creating the policy that makes sense and makes that able to succeed, allows that success to happen.
Works for families.
It-
Works for the providers to be able to provide the services the families need in the way that they need them, to be the most effective. It's about
So-
effective treatment. We know
So
we've done our job when we no longer are needed.
right.
We are working ourselves out of a job. Every session we work, every skill we teach. The goal is to have that family stand and be successful because we've helped them with the skills that they need to be successful. That's what our goal is.
And it's not good enough just to care, right?
Yep.
That's
no,
important.
it's not good enough just to care. You have to act.
It's important, but you've got to turn that into an action immediately and make it work. Like go to work. Do you want to hear another analogy?
Yeah.
I love the analogy that the governor actually used in a speech. It's a situation that actually happened as the Mormon pioneers were coming across the plains, and they knew that the importance of prayer was important, and they prayed often for help. But at one point, they were stuck. There was this wagon train that was stuck in the mud. Maybe it was a handcart company. I don't know. They were stuck in a massive mud bog, and they didn't think they were ever getting out. And one of the members of the company said, I think we should pray. And President Brigham Young said something
Those are
to the
called
effect
Jesus
of,
take the wheel
yeah,
moments
Jesus
when
take
you
the wheel.
pray.
Yep.
Yeah.
But he looked at him and said, we prayed this morning. Now get out and push.
Yeah.
Right? And that's
It takes action.
That's what we're doing. We're pushing. And we're going to push until we solve some problems.
Yep. So there's no more need, and every family gets to be successful. I think that is totally crucial for us and why we do what we do. Because it's families, for Utah Behavior Services, it's about our families are serving their families. And like I said, there's many families that work at Utah Behavior Services. There's a lot of it. And we believe strongly in families. So why would we not have our families serving families?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We believe in families. It's core to who we are. Our family is serving your family. And that's a core message for us.
My last question for you guys is, you mentioned legacy, Kerry. With all this advocacy work that you guys do for these families and to strengthen these families, how does that strengthen your team at UTBS? And what kind of legacy does that leave for Utah Behavior Services?
Once again, because it is families serving families, it doesn't matter. Families are made up of many different dynamics. It's not just blood. And we have many members of our team who have grown in a career path for them, not just in a clinical aspect in behavior analysis or social work, but also in the business aspect, also in the communications aspect, that we help families grow through that process and come up and become who they want to be, and contribute to the growth of other families. It takes many hands and it takes many specialties to be able to be successful at the level that we have been blessed, extremely blessed, to be able to serve these families. But we work as a family. No matter what, if they're your blood or you're not blood, it doesn't matter to us. You're still a member of our family and our team. And sometimes people opt out of our team and opt out of the family and need to move on to a different path. And that's okay. That really is okay for us. But and we'll miss them, and we wish them the best. But life is going to go on, because we have a number of family who are committed to doing it with Utah Behavior Services as a Utah Behavior Services team and family, serving families. And every day, one of our values is excellence, as well as strengthening families. And we're committed to excellence, so we're always pushing for better. and we're always we're committed to what we do, and those who are coming up and growing, I hope they're better than me. I hope they do way better than me. That is my hope and prayer for all of those that are coming and growing behind me to strengthen and do these families and help these families, is they do it better than me. That's the goal here. We want it better. We want every family to be successful, whether it's in a career path, whether it's in a treatment path to get a family in a stable place where they can find joy in being a family. That's crucial for us.
All right, before we end this podcast, Kerry, you mentioned earlier about bridging the gap. Natalie, I just wanted to ask you what that means to you and the families.
Bridging the Gap is about, and how it came about is because when we first started Utah Behavior Services, we noticed that there was a hole for services for kiddos from after early intervention. They'd completed early intervention until adulthood, when DSPD services could support them. And that was also, as I was a social worker at that time, is also the #1 age bracket of kiddos that were being, the parents were placing into foster care because they had autism and they were getting older and they didn't know what to do with them. So that became our specialty. Our specialty when we started was those kids that no one knew what else to do with. And there were our passion lies, and those are our gap kids. They're not early intervention. They're not where all the early intervention programs were. And they're not adults where all the other programs were. They were in this hole, this big gap in services. And those were the kiddos and the families that we started and were based from, were those kids in that gap, those families in the gap that didn't know where else to go, they didn't know what else to do, and they were at the end of their rope as a family, in total stress. So that's when we stepped in to, and why I stepped in why I started the company, why I went into this field, was because those kids and those families deserved somebody. They deserved to have somebody who believed in them and knew they could do it, the hard work, and could speak and advocate for them.
And Cooper, bridging the gap to me is kind of a way of, I measure success. It's how, I mean, our goal here should be perfection, right? We're not going to probably achieve perfection, but we're going to get as close as we possibly can, right? We're going to work hard to make sure every child and every family has the resources that they need to be successful with children with autism and the challenges that are around that. And to me, it's super important that we engage, every one of us, and that's why, to anyone listening to this podcast today, I would just hope that you would take this as a call to action. This is not something that a few of us are going to do. This is something that it's going to take every single one of us to put our shoulder to the wheel and push out of that mud bog, and push towards something better for all of these children. And so I'll get even specific here and say, help us with this legislative effort. If you don't know who your representative is, you should know them in person. They only represent about 30,000 people. Like, it's not that hard to find out who your legislator is and reach out to them and develop a relationship. Tell them what you care about. Tell them that you care about these types of projects that help children, and make sure that they understand that it's important to you. Make sure that they have your phone number, that they see you as a valuable asset. You need to know your representative, your senator. It's hard to get to know the governor, but it's not hard to get to know your representative, your legislator.
They're speaking for you. That is their representation up here, is they are truly speaking and representing you.
So interview them, visit with them, decide if you can help them in their re-election efforts. And if you can't, choose someone who you want to support, that you can that you believe does represent your views and your opinions, and just get involved with the process, because this process of advocacy does not work without the process of electing representatives to serve us. And so just be a part of that process, that part of the process of not only making sure that the right people are in office, but then supporting those who help us with our efforts. So please, just, if I can plead, it would be, make it personal with these people, personal in a positive way,
It's
like not
respectful.
negative at
I
all.
was just going to say
Respectful.
that. I want to,
Yeah, not negative.
please
But
be
develop-
respectful to
Oh,
these legislators.
absolutely. They're good
They
people.
serve everyone the best that they can, and they do their darndest, and it is a hard job. If you don't believe it's hard, come up here and watch a legislative day and be outside the House chambers or be outside the Senate chambers and see the chaos that of so many people pulling at them and so many needs to be met, and they're trying to do it for everybody. And it is a extremely hard job to do. But they have stepped into it as civil servants to do it for us, and please just be respectful
be kind. And
kind,
when I say personal, I can see how the general public might think, in a negative way. No, that's not what I'm saying. Make it personal means from the
Be
heart,
kind.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Means from the heart. Like, find out that way that you can develop a personal connection with these people, and it will pay off in the work that we do.
Because they are
single time.
trying.
They are trying.
They are trying. Please, they are trying, and I think that's key. And one of the key things I've learned up here through this process is they are trying to make a difference.
Exactly.
They have a heart, and they are trying, and so they need to have the guidance, and they need to have the support from their constituents to be able to speak and voice for their constituents in a positive way, so we can get positive change and turn things into a positive culture, one that builds each other up, builds the communities up, builds the state, builds the people, individuals, and I think that's another key thing is being positive, being solution focused is another key really core belief I have as well. But it's hard. We do the hard work. We don't take the easy way out, which is why we're here. Why we do the advocacy.
Well, I just want to thank you guys so much for being here today to share your expertise, your passion, and your insight into all of this. You guys have any last words before we sign off?
Let's go get them.
Thanks for having. I just want to, before we sign off, I think my biggest thing would be to say thank you to the families for keep on trying, to keep doing another day, to keep going forward in another, because it's hard to keep going every day for a family, but also I would really like to express gratitude to all of those that serve up in the legislative process. And it's not just a 6-week deal, 8 week, what is it? 6, no, it's 8. It's 8 weeks, right?
6 or 7,
Yeah.
45 calendar days.
It's not just a 45-day deal. These guys are working all year long, which is something I didn't realize when I started this process, that they are serving all year long, and they're trying to do their personal duties as well in the communities that are not the electoral part of their life, so in their personal life. So I have a deep respect for, and I am extremely grateful for those who put forth the effort to help us be a better community.
Hey listeners, thank you for listening to Bridging the Gap today with Natalie and Kerry. Please check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, as well as any more resources or information in our description below. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for having us.